Fáilte. Welcome to the Village Oak Tree. I'm your host, Terrance Ó Domhnaill. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to take a break from most of the news this last week of the Celtic New Year, what we in the Gaelic world called Ee-heh How-ná or Sow-in. I want to take this time to outline the future of this podcast going into my new year ahead. This is the time of year I typically make my big changes in life, much like what Christians tend to do around the 1st of January. New Year's resolutions, they call them. Since my annual calendar revolves around the ancient Celtic calendar, my New Year starts on November 1st using the Roman calendar. Yeah, the old ones didn't have a Roman before the Romans. They went, from moon cycle to moon cycle. But you know, I'm modern. I'll use the Roman calendar. I've decided to start spending some more time writing my novels and traveling around the United States pursuing photography in the new year ahead. The images I take I will showcase on my soon to be newly renovated website. The website address is shown below, or you can just use the QR code in the upper left corner. What that also means is that because of all this stress and the distractions of the daily news cycles, I will start fading out my podcast as we know it. My future plan is to make infrequent podcasts about my travels and the people I meet along the way, along with any earth-shattering news stories I find. Sort of like photojournalism with a lot of landscape and nature photography. I will write more articles and produce videos in the next year. Will this cause me to lose a lot of Substack subscribers? Probably. But then my mental health is a lot more important than how many subscribers I can garner from the internet. Life's too short to be worried about such shallow endeavors. At my age, I'd rather pursue nature than internet followers in the time I have left here in the Middle Earth. So I'll be writing more of my particular brand of activism in the blog on my website rather than for any corporate online platforms. All because of the threats of algorithmic censorship in this age of pro-Israel lobbies and Trump's authoritarian takeover. I'll probably quit writing in Substack altogether sometime in 2026 because of the corporate influence. I'll continue contributing to medium.com though, because I have quite a few friends there and a much larger fan base. So gather around, sit you down somewhere comfortable for a bit. Let's talk about a couple of things I found in the news, the Celtic New Year, and where Samhain, or in American and Yanks, the English call Halloween, comes from to finish out my new year. I know. I said I wouldn't talk about the political situation in the U.S. again, but last Friday, Chris Armitage wrote another brilliant article. The only reason I'm even mentioning it is because, one, he's absolutely right, and the window to fight back is becoming very small now after 10 months. What he's talking about in his article is how some leading experts are now saying in public that the United States has actually crossed the threshold from an actual democracy into what they call a competitive authoritarian regime. That we in the US are now living in the early stages of a full-on authoritarian regime. I pointed out when I restacked the article on my Substack page is that it's rather obvious for those of us who've been to authoritarian countries with gilded palaces and the people being afraid of the local warlords and secret police. I want everyone listening to this podcast or reading the essay that goes with this to think about that for a minute. Look around you. I mean, really look around you. Do you live somewhere in the U.S. where you've seen violent ICE raids in your neighborhoods? Have you been watching Trump on the TV or the internet when he does press interviews with foreign dignitaries? Have you seen the insane amount of gold plating all over that Oval Office? Sorry. Now he wants to build a gilded ballroom mirror after the throne room at the Russian Winter Palace, as one commentator reported. Ms. Jessica Wildfire writes that this is all smoke and mirrors to cover up the renovations of the presidential bunker underneath the East Wing. What do you think? Then there is the in-your-face blatant financial corruption with all of his cryptocurrency schemes, gifted airplanes, bribes for pardons, and so on. The real tell is the fact that the U.S. does not have a working federal government right now. We have the obvious shutdown, but Speaker Mike Johnson has effectively shut down the House of Representatives until further notice, sending all the reps home until he calls them back, which means the Senate can't do anything either other than show up to read emails and shuffle some papers on their desks. With no Congress, Trump is the government all by himself, which is what he said he wanted to do all those months ago. And we thought he was kidding. It looks like the joke's on us, and I'm not laughing. People are starting to wake up, but it may already be too late. Well, here's another wake-up call. We need a lot more No Kings protest and some threats made to Congress people that their jobs are on the line if they don't do something quick. If that doesn't get their attention, then maybe another American Revolution is needed to take back our government from these oligarchs. We already have the modern day version of the British Redcoats on the streets, just like they did back in the mid 1700s. Maybe we need another Lexington Concord type skirmish to let them know we mean business. Would you lay down and accept martial law if Trump imposes it? In another news report last weekend from Canada, Trump's CBP, Customs Border Patrol, have decided that all Canadians entering and exiting the country will now have their pictures taken at all ports of entry as of December 26. If I were a Canadian on learning this, I would most definitely not be crossing the U.S. border until this madness goes away, or never if it remains. I imagine this also applies to any other foreign visitors as well. Welcome to the police state called the United States of America, where your every move will be watched by shadowy surveillance technology and reported to the government. In this article, they mentioned that Europe has been doing this as well to deter terrorism. But here in the U.S., this has other darker purposes. If anyone dares to publicly say anything bad about the current regime in the U.S., the American Gestapo now has your photo, and they can find you anywhere, anytime they want. My advice, if you don't live in the United States, stay away from your own safety. Let's venture away from the dark side, so to speak, and talk about what Samhain means, or in the case of the Anglo countries, what they call Halloween. Ee-heh How-ná, which is Gaelic for Samhain or Halloween, originated in Ireland, with the Gaelic word Samhain, the name for the festival in November. This is the end of the Gaelic New Year and the beginning of winter, with festivals starting 3 days before the start of Samhain and for 3 days after the eve of Samhain. The first day of November is called Shana. According to Irish mythology, the night before Ee-heh How-ná is when the veils between the other worlds called Altar become thin enough for the Shea or fairy folk to cross over and cause all sorts of mischief on this night. This is because of the overlap of the old year and the start of the new on this night. During the 3 days leading up to Ee-heh How-ná, the Druids would read the auguries from the entrails of a slaughtered cow, usually offered by the village chieftain, and magical bones marked with Ogre runes tossed on a cloth. This was to try and portend the future of the new year. The Druids would also go up into the hills and light the sacred Ee-heh How-ná bonfires made up of 9 sacred woods and the bones of the slaughtered animals as offerings to the gods and ancestors so they could bless the villages, towns, and nobility across the land. The fires in the hills would be so great, they could be seen from many kilometers away. All of the people would then put out their hearth fires, clean out the old ashes, and leave them cold overnight on the eve of Ee-heh How-ná in order to start up anew with fresh wood and a torch lit from the sacred druid fires in the hills above them the next morning, How-ná. When the people would go up into the hills to get their sacred fire, they would also drive their cattle and other farm animals up and bring everyone in their clans in order to be blessed by the sacred smoke from the Ee-heh How-ná. The smoke is supposed to protect all of them, animals and people, from harm by the Shea and other bad things in the coming new year. After the Samhain fires were burned out, the ashes are then spread onto the lands to keep the dead away and bless the crops for the next year's harvest. In modern times, those of us who still follow these old traditions still light a fire, whether it be a huge bonfire like they still do in Knocknatara or the hills of Tara near Skryne in County Meath, or just a small fire in our backyards, like I do. We say the words to ward off the Shay, commune with our ancestors and the ancient gods of our mythology, praying for good luck, good health, good luck, and a prosperous new year. The Irish would also dress up as the Fae in order to fool the Shay while they were out and about late during Ee-heh How-ná. The idea of extorting treats from the adults using threats of curses to their lands is transformed into more benign costumes and less stressful merriment. Although the threat of the Shay causing mischief during the festivals of Samhain still remain today in the rural hills of Ireland. I hope you enjoyed this little sojourn into Irish traditions and mythology today. Keep your wee ones safe from the fairy folk and other nefarious actors on this eve of Oiche Shanhna, and as the English call it, All Hallows Eve, and what the Yanks call Halloween. Now, I butchered the Gaelic on this because I'm not a native speaker, so please forgive me. So there's no advert today, as I have an Irish tale of a banshee and true love that I wrote a couple of years ago to read on this first day of Ee-heh How-ná, called The Banshee How-ná. It's a bit longer than the short chapters you're used to on my podcast, so I hope you'll enjoy it. Much like sitting down to next to a warm turf fire and listening to the Shanachie, we have a tale for you. So, as I said, there's no commercial break today. I'm gonna bring this story up, and we'll bring it so I can read it to you. And I'll just read this story to you like I have in the past, and I hope you enjoy it. The Banshee of Clohanla, an Irish tale of a banshee and true love, by yours truly. Conor and Mary were a young couple in love, both in their early 20s and living with their parents outside of Clohanla in the north of Ireland. They were good Catholics, as their parents and grandparents had been going back generations. As an unmarried couple, they were obliged to follow through all of the traditions of the church. When they decided to make their relationship public, Conor wanted to go to Mary's parents to ask their permission, who would then go to the parish priest to publish the banns declaring them engaged, allowing them to do things together while chaperoned, providing that Mary's parents blessed the union. Conor's parents knew his intentions toward Mary and approved of the match. Once Conor made the request of her father, it was then all a matter of negotiating the size of the dowry and who was given what towards the eventual marriage. That's where things became a little problematic. It seemed that although Conor came from a decent family and they had a little land they farmed off of, Mary's father didn't think he was good enough for her. In fact, she was too good for anyone in their little town, and he wanted her to marry a boy from a prominent family in Donegal or Derry, or even, heavens forbid, England. Marrying a local farm boy was not his idea for her future. It didn't matter to him that she loved Conor, or as according to himself, quote, love doesn't matter when it comes to having a good future. Only marrying into a lot of money will keep you from living a life of hardships such as your mother and I suffered from, unquote. He was determined that she would never have to endure such hardships. When Conor arrived at their house at the appointed time, he asked to, quote, to speak of marriage to your daughter Mary, unquote. He told them, quote, I love her with all my heart, and I'll be a good husband and father to our children, unquote. Mary's father listened, as it was polite to do so, but after Conor was finished and waiting expectantly for an answer, the old man became gruff and told Conor, I cannot approve of this match because you aren't good enough for my daughter. I want more for her in life than for her to be a farmer's wife. As the old man told Conor this, his wife gasped in despair, as she knew how much Mary loved young Conor and knew he could take good care of her. But the conventions of the day wouldn't allow her to disobey her husband, and she had little to say in the matter. All she could do was talk to her daughter and try to keep peace in the family. She knew her daughter's temper, and when Mary learned of her father's decision regarding the marriage proposal, there would be tears aplenty and a lot of loud screaming between the two. She was afraid of what her daughter might do in retaliation once the tears and fury abated. Her husband was very stubborn, and she had never seen him back down when he made up his mind about something. She feared Mary might run away from home, convince Connor to elope with her, but as Connor came from a good family, she doubted he would do so. He stood to lose too much if he ran away with her. His father would likely disown him, and Connor would lose the inheritance rights to his dad's farm. That left Mary no choice but to grieve over the heartbreak. The rift between herself and her father would likely never mend. Who knows what the headstrong girl would do? After Connor left with his head hanging down and heartbroken, he went home and told his parents the news. His father jumped up in a rage and threatened to make Mary's father pay for this slight of his son's reputation. Connor's mother tried to calm him down, but he would have none of it. This is a slap in the face of our family's honor, and this cannot go unpunished. As Connor's father raged about the insult, Connor looked at his mother and shook his head. He never had any intentions of causing a feud to start up between the two families. He knew he needed somehow to talk to Mary, and maybe the two of them could figure something out. He was worried that her father might ban him from even speaking to her and try to lock her up in her room. He decided that no matter what, I need to try anyway. As his father continued to rant and rave about the insult, Connor snuck out quietly and walked across the heather of his father's farmland, quietly sneaking in next to Mary's house without arousing her parents. As he scouted the house by looking into the windows, he spied Mary in her room crying uncontrollably and quietly tapped on her window. After a bit, she noticed him and came to the window. She signaled that she was afraid of her father hearing them and would try to sneak out the window in a few minutes. Connor motioned to the oak tree down by the river that they had always used to spend their time together, and he would wait for her down at the beginning of the path. He blew her a kiss and walked down towards the path to wait for her. He found the edge of the path in the dark near the banks of the Ee-heh This is a river. He knew he knew he would find it with no trouble. They had walked down this path to the old oak tree so many times as children that either one could find it with their eyes closed. As he waited for her, he started to get a little concerned, as it was soon after dark and the fog had started to lift off the river. He was worried that the fog would prevent Mary from seeing the riverbank and she might fall in. He started to walk back towards her house to try and meet her on the way in order to keep her safe, when he discovered that the path was a little hard to see anymore. The fog had come on so thick he could barely see 3 feet in front of himself. Now he became really worried for Mary's safety and tried to quicken his steps up the path. As he finally arrived at her house, he looked around for her everywhere outside and couldn't find her. In a near panic, he dared to look into her window again and found her gone. He then went around to another window to try and see into the main part of the house, but he could only see her parents there, with her father reading a paper at the table and her mother working in the kitchen. Now Connor really became scared for her. There was no other explanation. Mary had snuck out of the house and might be lost on the path to the old oak tree. He set back out as quickly as he could without making any noise to try and find her. By this time, the fog from the river had come in and blanketed everything near the river. Connor could barely see his hand in front of his face, much less the path under his shoes. As he slowed down to make sure he didn't leave the well-worn path to the river, he kept looking hard through the fog to try and see Mary. Connor's heartbeat was racing by now. The trees around him had become spooky specters in the fog, and the slightest noise made him jump. He gathered up the collar of his coat around his neck to ward off the chill and continued down the path towards the tree, all the while peering into the fog to try and find Mary. After Mary heard her father settle down to read his evening paper, she quietly opened her bedroom window and hoped the hinges didn't squeak. She had changed into something more suitable to meet Connor with down by the path to the old oak tree. As she climbed out the window, she didn't see him anywhere. She thought, he must be waiting for me down at the edge of the path on the other side of the yard from the house. The path to the oak tree starts there anyway. She quietly headed down the yard and found the path by the edge of the rock fence. As she started down the path, she noticed that the fog was starting to come up from the river, and she picked up her pace. As she got closer to the river, the fog became thicker. She had to slow down in order to see where she was going. Since Connor hadn't been waiting at the edge of the field at the rock fence as she had hoped, she figured he must already be down under the tree. She became a little upset at him for not being there where she thought he would be, as the fog and shadowy trees were starting to frighten her a little now. She was already fuming about her dad, and now she wanted to vent to Connor about everything, including not thinking of her lost in the fog by herself. She continued to make her way down the path without losing her footing so far, and was thankful that she knew this path like the back of her hand, having traveled down it so many times in her life. She had been coming down here since she was a wee girl and was pretty confident that she could make her way in the dark and fog. She knew she was getting close, but she started to hear the river off to her left more and more. She continued slowly down the path towards the oak tree and hopefully Connor. She was afraid more and more now that she would miss him in the fog along the way. As Connor began to head back down to the river, he started to hear a small sound like a wailing and keening of the widows at a wake. At first, it was something just on the edge of his hearing, like the river flowing. Then, as he continued on towards the river, the sound started to get louder and louder. Bone chilling wailing that gave him the shivers to hear it. Once he made it down the trees near the river, the sound was making his teeth hurt and scrunch up even more inside his coat. He knew what it was. He knew what it was, even though he'd never heard the sound before. Like all lads and colleens from the countryside of Ireland, he grew up on stories of the Banshee. He always thought they were just stories made up by the Shanachie to scare the little ones for fun. Now he wasn't so sure they were just myths from the old ones. He knew what that meant if he was right. Banshee was warning him that someone he loved was in danger of dying, and he may already be too late. With that thought in mind, he hurried even faster down the path through the woods. He had to find Mary before it was too late. Mary continued down the path as it followed the river. She was close now. The river was just feet away as the path continued towards the old oak tree. With the fog so thick now, she knew she needed to keep a close eye on the path so as not to fall into the river amid this fog. If she did, no one would ever find her body, and her ghost would haunt the woods around. She slowly made her way forward and pretty soon made out the spreading branches of the old oak tree and the little spot underneath where they liked to spend their time together without the prying eyes of her family and neighbors. As she made her way closer to the tree, her foot slipped off the wet path and she lost her balance. As she grabbed a small bush in the dark to right herself back onto the path again, she stopped and caught her breath. That had been very close to disaster. As her heart returned to normal, she made her way under the tree and decided to stay put. She might be damp and cold, but at least it was safe under the old tree. She had always felt comfortable under this tree, as if she were sitting by the fire at home. It felt like the tree were somehow protecting her from harm, much like she used to feel about her father when she was a wee girl. All she could do was wait and pray for Connor to find her here so they could decide what to do next. Connor kept going despite the intense keening he was hearing coming from the river. He knew that it was a matter of life and death right now, so he made all haste down the path towards the river and the oak tree. As he rounded the small bend on the path, he could just make out the river to his left and knew he was close. He continued to scan the woods and river bank for Mary so that he didn't miss her along the way. His worst feeling was to find her hurt or dead along the riverbank or off the path in the woods alongside. He tried not to think about it as he continued on. All the while, the wailing sound of the banshee kept up in his head, getting louder as he made his way along the riverbank. Soon enough, he spied the big spreading branches of the old oak tree in the fog ahead and made his way forward. As he got closer, he thought he could see someone sitting down under the tree in their favorite spot. He hoped it was Mary. After a couple more steps, he also saw something else moving toward her from the direction of the river. He couldn't quite make it out in the fog, but he had a feeling that it wasn't good. He rushed forward recklessly to find Mary and try to protect her from whatever it was. He could see that it was moving slowly as if stalking her in the dark. He rushed over and grabbed her off the ground. She started as she hadn't seen him coming out of the dark so quickly, and before she had time to ask, Connor whispered behind him and told her to shush. As Connor tried to face the danger lurking in the dark fog behind where Mary had been waiting, he worked to try and peer into the woods where he had last seen whatever it was. All he could see now were shadows in the fog and outlines of the trees, all dark shapes without much definition. He was concerned whatever may have been stalking her would jump them if he turned his back and tried to walk her back home. He waited a bit to see if he could see anything move. There was nothing. He couldn't see anything in this fog, and whatever had been moving had stopped. Maybe lying in wait? Was it just his fearful imagination? Connor didn't want to take that chance. Meanwhile, Mary was wondering what was going on. At first, she was startled when he grabbed her arm and pulled her off the ground, then moved in front of her. Now she was wondering what he was looking for out in the dark, foggy night. She wanted to ask him, but he put his finger to his mouth and looked at her intensely. She knew that look and remained quiet for the moment. Whatever he was looking for may be dangerous from that look he just gave her. She decided to wait and see and be ready to run if he told her to. Connor continued to peer into the dark fog, waiting to see if anything moved in their direction again. So far, nothing. After a few minutes, he decided to take a chance on getting Mary back to her house safely. There would be another time when they could talk about the marriage dilemma. Now was not a good time this late after dark with everything that was going on at the moment. Connor whispered to her without taking his eyes off the woods. I fear I saw something stalking you from behind whilst you were sitting under the tree. I want to make sure it was safe before I walk you back home. At this, her heart started jumping in her chest. Not only was it dark and foggy out, now she had to worry about some unseen danger lurking in the dark woods that might hurt them or worse. Then he told her about hearing the banshee on the way down here. At that, she really got scared. She also knew what that meant. But as she thought about it, she said, it couldn't be either of us as we're here together. I can't hear it myself. And she started wondering about her parents. Could something have happened to them? She whispered this to Connor as he stood there looking out still. At that, he looked at her. We need to get back home as quickly as possible. Connor stepped back from his spot under the tree, and as he did, he spotted the banshee by the river bank next to her tree. An old hag of a woman with a black cloak and a hood wailing the keen of the dead. Connor asked Mary if she could hear the keening as he did, but she just shook her head no with a wide-eyed, scared look on her face. And Connor knew it wasn't anyone in her family that the banshee was wailing for. It must be someone in his family that was in mortal danger. Connor decided it was time to go now. He turned around, took Mary's arm, and carefully they made their way back up the path towards her house. As they got further away from the river, the keening sound stayed with Connor all the way up the path. Once he got close enough to see the lights of her house, he stopped, pulled her close, and told her, I love you. She hugged him and replied, I love you too. She was very mad with her father, but she didn't know what to do. He told her, my father is also very mad for a different reason. He explained, my father feels slighted over this, and he wants justice for the insult. He thinks that whether we're married or not, your father has no right to say that I'm not good enough for you because we're farmers. Mary didn't know what to say about that. She said, I should head back in before my parents go to bed so they won't hear me sneaking back through my window. Connor kissed her goodnight and watched until she had crawled back through her window. Then he headed home himself. When he arrived home, his father was waiting for him. He told Connor, I'm planning to go have a talk with Mary's father on the morrow for slighting our good name. I want you to go with me. Connor agreed and told him good night. Next morning, Connor got up and, remembering the wailing of the banshee from the night before, decided that caution was the order of the day. He would be watching his father to make sure nothing happened during their talk with Mary's father later that day. They broke their fast and set out towards Mary's house. His father, being a stubborn sort, walked at a brisk pace down the lane. As they reached the gate to Mary's house, her father came out to greet them and told them both, stop right there. That's as far as you go. You're not welcome on my property. You can state your piece from that side of the gate. Connor's father then proceeded to berate the man for the insult to his family and wanted a recompense. Mary's father just laughed and said, off with you. We're better than you dirty farmers. We want nothing to do with a lot of you. With that, he turned around and started back to his house. Connor's dad yelled out, you'll pay for that, and went through the gate with a rush with Connor in his wake, trying to get him to calm down to no avail. His father ran up to Mary's father, spun him around, and punched him in the face, knocking him down. The old man got up off the ground, and they both started to fight, neither one laying another hand on each other as they danced around in the yard. Connor tried to break it up and got pushed to the ground for his troubles. As they squared off some more, Mary and her mother came out to see what all the noise was about. As they rounded the corner of the house, They found the two men trying to punch one another without much success, and Connor still tried to get between them. Connor's clothes had mud on them, and his hair was all messed up with no hat on anymore. Mary's mother yelled for them to stop, and all three turned to look at her. As she came up to them, she asked in a stern voice, "What is all the fuss about?" As the two older men stammered, Connor stepped up and told her, "My father wants justice for being insulted by your husband." Mary's mother looked at her husband and started calling him a stubborn old fool for taking on airs, caused so much trouble with everyone. She asked him, "Are you planning an arranged marriage to some rich Englishman? Is that what you want for your daughter, to be married off for a bit of extra gold coins?" With that, she looked at Connor and his father and then apologized to them on her husband's behalf. She turned around, looked at her daughter, and shook her head as they walked back towards the house. Mary's father glowered at them as they walked off and shook his head. He told Connor's dad, "Leave me be and I'll sort this out." He looked at Connor and said to him, "Mary will not be seeing you again without my permission." As they left to go back home, Connor's father looked at him as if embarrassed and said, "I'm sorry. I will figure something out, but until I do, stay away from Mary's house for now." Connor just looked back at him without a word. Connor thought to himself as they walked home, "There is no way I'm going to stay away from Mary just because these two old men can't put their family pride aside and be thankful for the two of us." Later that evening, after everyone had quieted down, Connor snuck out of his house and headed down to Mary's house. He took the back way through the fields and came up to the house from the riverside. He kept himself low so as not to be seen from inside the house, creeping up to Mary's window to tap on the glass. He heard her moving, and soon she opened the window a bit so they could whisper. He apologized for his dad and wanted to know, "Do you want to come out and talk to me a bit?" She stepped back and said, "I'll check to see what my folks are doing. I'll let you know in a minute." She came back and said, "Give me a half hour, and I'll meet you down by the path near the rock fence like before." Connor stepped back, turned around, and quietly walked down to the end of the fence to wait. As he stood trying to wait patiently, it started to get dark. He started thinking about the night before with the wailing of the banshee. No one has died yet, he thought, and he wondered if the prophecy had been averted today or had it yet to be fulfilled. As he stood thinking about that, he realized that a half an hour had passed and Mary wasn't here yet. He wondered what might have happened. He hoped her father hadn't caught her trying to sneak out of the house and locked her in her room. He would give her a few more minutes. If she didn't show up, he would go back to check on her. After a few more minutes, he decided she wasn't coming. It was time to go see what happened. As he started up the little hill towards the house, the moon had risen. He knew that he needed to be as invisible as possible in order to make it up close to the house and to Mary's window again. Connor crept closer to the end of the rock fence and peered around a bit to see if the coast was clear. He didn't see anything, and he made a break for the corner of the house to where a large tree was growing. As he hid behind the tree and lay down on the rocks next to the house, he could hear a row going on inside. Mary and her father were going at it like two cats, so Connor knew that she must have been caught trying to sneak out of the house. He waited until the shouting stopped. Once he heard a door slam shut, Connor snuck up to her window and lightly tapped. Mary came to the window and slipped it open a crack. She confirmed what Connor had thought. Her father had caught her trying to sneak out and confined her to her bedroom for now. Connor told her, "We have to find a way for you to get out of that house as your father is becoming dangerous." They stood at the window discussing plans for her to escape. After they had a tentative plan worked out, Connor went home and snuck back in as quietly as he could. The next day, Connor's dad took him aside and told him, "I will stand by you on whatever you decide is best for you and Mary. I will also talk to your mother about it when the time comes. Obviously, having a family wedding in the local parish church is the ideal situation, but ultimately, I want you both to be happy together above all." Connor still couldn't get rid of that feeling that something bad was going to happen. That Banshee Whalen was still very much on his mind. He didn't think the prophecy had been completed yet, and he was worried. He knew his father, and knew also that he didn't forgive easily. The business from yesterday was still simmering. He just knew it. Connor knew that Mary's father wouldn't give in either. Connor didn't like the thought of Mary being auctioned off to the highest bidder like a brood mare, all to line the pockets of her father. His only hope was to talk to Mary's mother somehow to see what could be done before something bad happened between their fathers. That was a plan that Connor and Mary had talked about last night at her window. She would work on talking to her mother when she knew her father would be out of the house for a while. Connor's part in all this was for him to finish his chores and sneak back down to their house to wait. When she signaled him that it was all clear, she would let him in to state his case to her mother. Connor went down to her house about mid-morning to wait for the signal. As he stood around out of sight, he looked up and saw that rain would soon be coming, and he didn't want to get caught up in it. As he was looking and thinking, he saw Mary come out and wave to him. He walked warily up the house, half expecting to get jumped by her father. As he stepped up, Mary gave him a kiss on the cheek and welcomed him into the kitchen for a sit down with her mother. She was already at the table waiting. She motioned for him to sit and told Mary to bring them some tea. As he removed his coat and sat down, he waited a bit to see if she wanted to start the conversation. Mary's mother looked at him, seemed to look at him differently this time. It's not like Connor hadn't been to this kitchen before. Mary and Connor were childhood friends, but now it was a different look. She asked him, "What are your intentions regarding Mary?" She knew that they wanted to do the right thing and get married in the church, but with her husband being so stubborn about money and pride, she wanted to make sure they weren't planning to run away together. Connor assured her, "We have no intentions of running away, but we are determined to be married somehow." Mary echoed that same feeling as she poured the tea. Mary's mother smiled and said, "I thought so, as I can see it in my daughter's eyes whenever we talk about you." At that, Connor's face turned red, and he looked at Mary with his stomach in a knot. He told them, "All I ever want is to make Mary happy and be a good husband and father. I just need a chance to prove it to you both." He talked about how his folks already considered Mary their daughter-in-law and were looking forward to welcoming her to the family. "We just need your husband's blessing before going to the church to post the engagement banns." Mary's mother told him, "I am all for this match, as I also want to see my daughter happy. I will try to talk to my husband and let you know. You need to be patient, though. Don't do something in anger and regret it later," looking at her daughter. With that, Connor got up to leave, and just as he was putting on his coat, Mary's father came through the door all in a rage. "What are you doing here after I told you to stay away? You're trespassing, and I'll thrash you all the way out to the front gate." As the old man reached for Connor batted his hand away and said, "I was just leaving anyway," and looked at Mary's mother to bid her goodbye. Mary's father took the advantage, and as Connor was looking away, hit him on the side of the head, knocking him to the floor. Connor was stunned, and the old man started to give him a kick when Mary jumped on him from behind, trying to stop him. The old man was in such a rage, he didn't recognize her and threw her off of him where she flew back into the kitchen, hitting her head on the counter. When Connor saw this, he flew into a rage, jumping up from the floor to hit the man as hard as he could. The old man hit the wall with his head as he was dazed for a bit and slumped to the floor. Connor immediately went to where Mary was lying on the floor to see how badly she was hurt. Her mother also jumped up when the fight started. They both reached her, and Connor saw the gash on the back of her head with all the blood. He knew that she needed immediate medical care, and the nearest doctor was miles away, a good couple of hours' ride by horse and carriage. There was no time. Mary's mother grabbed a cloth and put it to the wound to try and stop the bleeding, while Connor straightened her legs out to make sure she hadn't been hurt anywhere else. He looked at Mary's mother and told her, "During the war, I received some battlefield medical training. Please let me try to help her." As he was washing his hands, he started to hear the banshee again. When he looked up, he saw that her mother had also heard the sound of the wailing. She looked at Connor with a fear in her eyes that he had never seen her with, ever. He kneeled down and went to work. As he started to check her for broken bones and especially her skull, her father started to come around and sat up, shaking his head. As he looked at his daughter lying on the floor with the blood around her head, his eyes got big around, and that is when he also heard the banshee wailing. He looked at Connor and his wife as if to ask what happened. His wife glared at him and told him, "If you ever want to see your daughter alive again, you need to stay out of Connor's way and let him do his best for her." As she said this, he nodded his head and asked, "Have you also heard the wailing of the banshee?" They both replied, "Yes," Mary's mother told him. "We're all hearing it now. Shut up and stay out of the way." He just sat on the floor and looked on quietly. Meanwhile, Connor finished his examination and told everyone, "I don't think she broke her skull. but it is a little soft around where she hit her head. We need to clean her up as gently as possible, then try and stitch the wound closed as best as we can for now. I'll go fetch the doctor after Mary has settled into her bed. Connor and Mary's mother worked together to clean her up and stitch the wound, which Connor did a great job of. They wrapped her head in bandages while her father rigged a board to slide Mary onto so they could keep her from moving too much while they got her into the bed. Once Mary was in her bed with her mother watching over her, Connor went back out to the kitchen and cleaned himself up. He told her father, "I'll be back with the doctor as soon as I can." All her father could do was nod his head and listen to the wailing outside. Connor ran home, told his parents what happened and that he needed the horse to fetch the doctor. Connor's father ran out with him and helped him saddle up the horse, wishing him Godspeed. Connor and the horse ran like the wind, all the while hearing the banshee in his ears. As he pushed the horse to run all the way to the doctor's office, all he could think about was whether Mary would still be alive when he returned. He reined in the horse at breakneck speed and ran into the doctor's office, telling him what happened and what he had done so far. The doctor grabbed his kit and ran to his buggy to follow Connor down to the house. By the time Connor returned to Mary's house, it was nearly dark and the doctor was still a while behind him. He rushed to the door and knocked pretty hard. Mary's father opened it, and Connor pushed by him to see how Mary was doing. When he entered the bedroom, her mother came up to him and held his hand, telling him she doesn't look good. Her breathing is shallow, and she's very pale. It's all in God's hands now. She had been praying the rosary over her and asking God for her return. Connor told her in a quiet voice, "The doctor is on the way, and he should be here very soon." When the doctor finally arrived, Connor escorted him in to see Mary. As he examined her, he commented on the good work they had given Mary as it likely saved her life. He finished his exam, made a couple of recommendations, but by and large, it's wait and see if she'll pull through. Say a lot of prayers for her as we wait. She has a bad concussion, and I recommend that her stitches be replaced later with something better in my kit, but I don't want to disturb her now until she's had some time to rest, maybe in a day or two. As Connor walked the doctor out, he asked Connor, "Have you had any medical training?" Connor told him about his combat field medical training while serving in the British Army. The doctor said, "If you ever want to continue your education, I'll sponsor you at the university. Yeah, and as I can tell, you have a gift for medicine." Connor thanked him and replied, "I'll think about it later." Then the doctor asked him, "Are you family?" Connor told him about their situation and what caused the injury in the first place. Connor helped him into his buggy and waved goodbye as he returned inside. Mary's mother told him, "I'll stay up with her and send word over if her condition changes in any way." Mary's father stepped in the room, looking at Connor with a different light. He said, "I'll run up and let you know if anything changes." As Connor went to leave, the old man came up to him to say, "I'm so sorry for attacking you and for hurting my only daughter. I'm beside myself with worry, but I still had time to think about how obvious it is that you love my daughter and will take good care of her in the future." They shook hands and Connor went home. That night, Connor couldn't sleep, and the banshee kept up a constant vigil in his head. Whenever he closed his eyes, he could see the old crone in the dark cloak by the Amen keening away in the night. He was scared for Mary. Just because the banshee was wailing didn't always mean someone was going to die. It just meant that there was someone close to death's door, and it could go either way. Next day, Connor went back down after his morning chores to see how Mary was doing. When he knocked on the door, her father answered again and let him in. Her mother shook her head, said there hasn't been any change through the night. Connor asked if he could sit a while with Mary to give herself a bit of rest. She smiled a tired smile and said yes, that would be nice. Connor sat in the chair next to the bed and held Mary's hand. He talked quietly about what the doctor had said regarding going to university to study to be a doctor, about the farm and how much he missed her. After sitting for a while, he got up to stretch his legs and noticed that it was quiet. As he stood up, turning his back to Mary, he stepped over to look out the window. Connor heard a stirring behind him, and he turned to look back. Mary had opened her eyes, looking wan and with a small smile on her face. Connor leapt back to the chair and gently grabbed her hand. calling for her mother. When her mother entered the room and saw her daughter awake, she started to cry and went to hold her other hand. Her father came to the door and started to tear up as well. Connor asked Mary, "How are you feeling?" Mary replied softly with a raspy voice, "I have a very bad headache, but I'm feeling very thirsty now." Her mother went to get a glass of water and Connor smiled. He was very happy that she had finally woke up, and he realized that the keening had stopped. As far as he was concerned, everything was going to be all right from here on out. As Mary spent the next few weeks recovering from her injury, Connor spent every day he could with her. Mary's mother teased with a smile one morning, "May it just as well move in as much time as you're spending here." As for her father, he never recovered from hurting his daughter and was never quite the same after that day. He let his wife take care of the house and he just went about his business with few words after that. As far as Connor was concerned, he might have just been another piece of furniture in the place, as the old man barely noticed him anymore. When Mary was finally well enough to get up and about, Connor asked her mother if they could get married, and she said, "I thought you already were as much as you cared for her here. Bring your parents down to meet with us so we can discuss their wedding plans." Connor gave her a great big smile and told her, "I'll talk to them tonight." Connor and Mary got married 12 months later. While they were engaged, Connor spent his free time learning at the side of the doctor in the town, receiving his sponsorship to go to medical college. As soon as they were married, they took off for Dublin so Connor could start attending classes at university in the next session. Connor graduated with honors a few years later, and they came back to the county so Connor could practice medicine, living happily ever after. As for the banshee, she was never heard from again after the day Mary woke up from her injury. So that's the my Samhain story, if you will. I hope I hope you enjoyed it. Gora Mahagat, thank you for watching or listening to the show today. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll return again to listen to me offer a voice of what a lot of people are thinking these days. To say goodbye this week, I wish you all Ee-heh Shanhna, Ee-heh How-ná, not Huna de Goler. Happy Halloween to you all. Slongo foil.